Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Friends of NRA is your chance to support our Second Amendment rights and preserve America's hunting traditions. Join Friends of NRA at one of our 600 exciting events nationwide. From games to auctions and exclusive firearms, Friends of NRA events are your chance to support a cause you care about while having a great time with patriots in your community. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, an avid hunter or outdoorsman, or passionate about freedom, there's a place for you within Friends of NRA. Visit friendsofnra.org to find an event near you. Stand up for freedom with the Friends of NRA.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Hunter Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for the modern hunter. Mossberg, American-built, American-strong. Vineyard Max, deer attractants created for the aroma of success, game feeders, and other innovative hunting products. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from the Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. Welcome to another episode of DSC's Campfires, coming to you this time actually about the last week of January, and happened to be in the hunting camp with Mr. Jeff Rice and Luke Clayton on my lease out in far west Texas. Went out this morning, and Jeff was able to take a really nice doe, and got a few more bucks we're looking forward to try to take, and maybe another doe for these guys have to leave to go back home tomorrow. But we got a great hunt coming up this afternoon. It was a good hunt this morning, and unfortunately these guys have to leave. But the bad part about it is they're leaving me about 5 pounds heavier than I was before I got here with all the good food. So, guys, thank y'all for joining us. Jeff, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about your hunt this morning.
Well, I tell you what, it started out pretty interesting. I got in the blind. Of course, we got in the blind probably 15, 20 minutes before it actually got light. And I'm sitting in the blind, and I'm just trying to glass just to see anything. It was really foggy this morning, a lot of mist and fog. And all of a sudden I looked, I'm like, man, there's a deer under the feeder. Well, long story short, there was like 6 or 7 deer in and around the feeder. And as it got lighter and lighter, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a big buck in there. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wish Larry was sitting here, because that's one Larry needs to shoot. So I've decided I was just going to sit, be quiet, get some film, and I wasn't going to spook anything, just let them meander off. So maybe you can hunt them tomorrow morning, and maybe you'll get on that big buck. It was a nice one.
Well, I'm trying to shoot one good buck here on this property this year, and since you mentioned that, it was like yesterday afternoon and this morning both. You're hoping to take a really nice management buck, and our management bucks are pretty darn nice, 8 points, and sometimes a little bit less than that, but there were at least 3 bucks standing around my area last night, and there were 2 of them there this morning. The whole time I was thinking, oh my God, I wish Jeff or Luke were here so they could shoot these. Let me run with, what did you say? Now, you've been here, both of you guys were here last year with me, and we were here primarily trying to shoot does. And Jeff, you saw a lot of bucks, but look, what have you been seeing?
You know what, Larry? I tell you what, this is the second year that I've hunted this place, and I've hunted a very good spot each time, the same stand. I have seen nothing but bucks and bucks and bucks, and most of my hunting career, I would have thought this was deer hunting heaven. I'll be honest with you, but no kidding. Actually, this morning I saw some does crossing. They weren't within range; they were in the brush. But bucks every time I've been there. And one ate I'm pretty sure an 8-point that is tantalizing me right now.
Good.
He is a good buck, and he's in the management plan
Right.
that you have. He's not a 10. He's a 8. He came in, and the rig I'm shooting, I would have had no problem at 120 yards shooting him at all. But he would not show me the whole his headgear. He'd show me a little, just enough to tantalize me a little bit. I said, that's got to be that buck, because his hocks were stained from the hocks all the way down to almost to the hood, and he was a good sized buck. I'm sure he was an 8-point, but I wasn't sure enough to pull the trigger, bottom line. So I'll be looking this afternoon.
I got a feeling he may be coming back here this afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of foggy for a while
Yeah.
this morning as well, too. And the temperature, even though was not below freezing, for whatever reason this morning, I guess because of all the humidity, it just was cold.
I mean, for 45 degrees, it felt like it was 25.
It did. It did.
It was cold. There's no question about it. I actually had a little vest on that has a little battery pack that heats you up and
He's
warms
cheating
you.
on us.
I tell you what, I had that on. I was still cold. But it was a beautiful, beautiful morning to sit. I really was. And I saw nothing but bucks as well. That's what I saw. Bucks everywhere.
This place is amazing this time of the year. Usually early on we see a fair number of does, and once we get into the rut and then post rut like we are here now, it's amazing how many bucks are. And the other thing that we saw this yesterday, first feeder we pulled up to, and we're hunting around feeders right now because we're trying to be real selective so we get a really good idea before we pull the trigger, as you were alluding to, Luke. But yesterday, when we got here and went to the first place we went to, we found a very freshly shed antler off of a buck that was an 8-point that probably would have scored in the 130s without a whole lot of trouble, just by the fact that it shed an antler. But right next to it, not very far away, was a very fresh scrape that a buck had just made. So it's an interesting thing that's going on right now.
It is. And actually this morning I saw 2 bucks lock horns, and they were kind of messing around, and I'm like, this late in the season, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is interesting. This country that we're in is out west of San Angelo, and the lease that we're on, half of it is kind of mesa and deep canyons, and the other half looks to me a whole lot like South Texas. And of course, having spent so much time down in the brush country of South Texas with mesquite and cactus and stuff, that's kind of my favorite place to be. And so that's kind of why I've got y'all set up where you are. Luke, what were you hunting with this morning?
Yeah, I was using, Larry, 6.5 PRC shooting the Hornady bullets.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a Cascade, CVA Cascade, and I feel very confident with this rig. A Stealth Vision scope, it is by far, I've had some good scopes. I've got some scopes I've had a long time. This Stealth Vision scope, as you know, Larry, it's the best that I've ever shot. You can, if you range out there as far as you'd want to shoot a deer, you dial it in, that turret in, and get you a good rest and squeeze the trigger. So, yeah, that's what I was using. I'm going to be ready to squeeze one off.
Well, I'm going to be listening this afternoon when we go out because I got a feeling. I did hear a shot somewhere off in the distance this morning.
Yeah, I heard one.
And I thought, the area that we're in, there's only very few ranches that have MLD programs. We have the Managed Land Deer Permit thing here, which allows us to hunt till the end of February. But they being the state of Texas, issues a certain number of buck tags, a certain number of doe tags, and this year my schedule has been such, or this past hunting season my schedule has been such that this is only the 3rd time I've been to the lease, so I still have got a pretty good stack of both those tags laying there. So. Jeff, what about you? What were you shooting this morning?
I was shooting a Remington 30-06, and boy, it dropped that doe, no problem. I was shooting Hornady ELDX bullets, and man, I tell you what, it did the trick. That's what I needed.
Well, the tagline of Hornady for years has been accurate, deadly, dependable, and having shot lots of animals in a lot of places, I can attest to the fact that that's exactly what it is. How far away was that one this morning that you took?
Probably 100 yards, maybe.
Perfect.
A little over 100 yards, maybe. Not much. Yeah.
Perfect, by golly. That to me is, I love shooting long range. And Luke, I know we kind of introduced you to long range there at Stealth Vision, and where we're shooting at targets or steel plates out to 1,200 yards. But to me, the whole thing comes down to, the reason I do that is so if I get within 100 yards of them, I can precisely place my bullet. And that's kind of the way I feel about long-range hunting. To me, we were driving around this morning just kind of scouting after we finished hunting, and we saw deer running probably at 700-800 yards. Now, if they'd have stopped with the rifles that we're shooting, and I'm shooting a 6.5 PRC, a Mossberg, a Patriot, a Predator, with a 3-18 by 44 Stealth Vision scope on it. With that combination, knowing that what the distance is, using their rangefinder binoculars, from a good solid rest, could I hit that animal at 600 yards? Yeah, no doubt in my mind. There was no wind. But if I'd have shot that animal, or one of us had shot that animal or that we saw at that distance, finding him would have been very, very difficult. Even to me, if you'd had somebody stand back at the vehicle. So that's one of the reasons, particularly if you're by yourself, I really don't think it's a great idea to be shooting at those long ranges.
No, I've been hunting deer as long as you have, Larry.
Right.
Since I guess the first time I really hunted deer was 1960. We called it hunting.
Right.
At East Texas and Southeast where you were, there weren't that many deer.
No.
But in my career, and I've killed a ton of deer in my life, 429 yards is the farthest. Back in the day, our rifles just weren't. I used a Winchester, a Model 88, a lever, and it was a good gun inside a couple hundred yards, but they just weren't made. The stock guns that we had back then for shooting 500 yards.
Right.
The ones I had weren't. So that gun that I shot, actually a mule deer out in the Trans-Pecos. I was hunting with a gentleman, and he was a rifleman from way back. He had a Model 70 pre-64 in a 270. He had a shilling barrel on it and had it all rigged out and tricked out. And I'd missed one with a muzzleloader earlier that day at about 150 yards. And he said, "We got to get you a mule deer, Luke." And he an old Army Jeep that he was using. So he said, "Jump in. I know a spot." So we drove up on top of a little mountain down there, and there was a water hole down there. And he said, "Let's just sit right here." He had put a pad down on the hood of that Jeep and got us all set up.
Right.
And he said, "There'll probably be some good deer, a good buck coming into that water hole. I've got him mounted now." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm ready." And I knew how to shoot, but I'd never had anything that I felt comfortable at 429 yards. We ranged it.
Right.
And good buck, really good desert mule deer came out, and gave him a drink of water, and I put it on him and held where he told me to. I said, "You want me to hold a little high?" He said, "I want you to hold on his back," because he sighted those rifles in at 200 yards.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was it. But that was the farthest to this day that I've ever taken an animal, in a hunting situation. But shooting out there with the Stealth Vision guys at 1,200 yards, if you know how to relax, breathe, aim, squeeze, and shoot, it's not hard to hit that target at 1,200 yards. Not hard with their...
Not with the equipment that they have capabilities of using these days.
That's right. So, but like as far as shooting a deer, I think maybe 400 yards, 500 yards with the gear that we're using right now, a broadside standing shot from a dead rest. Yeah, I'd do that. I would. Mm-hmm.
Interesting you mentioned the old model Winchester 88. It was a 243, right?
Yes, it was.
My father-in-law, Ed Potter, had a 243 Model 88, and I used it for making two long shots. One of them was a doe that I shot on Christmas Eve out at his place. We were wanting to try to get some venison for some sausage, and this doe would not come any farther, and finally handed me the rifle, and he said, "See if you can hit that thing." Well, I got really lucky and hit it, and then about 2 years later, I'd borrowed that rifle again because we were doing a bunch of work on pronghorn antelope out in West Texas. and I shot at one many times. This was for a collection trip. We were trying to kill specific animals because of how their health conditions were, and finally, I'm not going to tell you how many shots I fired, but finally on the last shot I had in the rifle, he was out there about half a mile, and unfortunately the poor thing ran into it. So that Model 88 years ago, you could occasionally shoot something a little bit farther with it.
It was honestly, it was a 2-inch group at a 100-yard
Right,
gun.
that's
what it
basically what it was.
But it would do that all the time, and if, inside 150 yards,
Oh my gosh, yes.
it would get it done. And I still got that old rifle. I gave it to my son, the oldest son, Matt,
Right.
who was with me on all those hunts back in the day. And he remembered that it had a sling, and he likened it to the rifleman.
Oh, yes.
So you pull it off for a quick shot. So I gave it to him, but I talked to him recently, and I said, son, what I want to do, that gun is yours. He said, oh, no, really, it's yours as long as you're on planet Earth. I said, no. Let's just say it belongs to us.
Right.
But it's in your keeping. I wanted to, So, but I want to borrow that thing for about 2 weeks, and I want to take it on a deer hunt, because I had the barrel cleaned before I gave it to him. It's still doing what it used to do.
Right.
2-inch group at 100, it'll do it. I want to take that old Model 88 back out and shoot. I don't care if it's a hog or a deer. Take it out on another hunt. Then I'll get it back to the sun.
Interestingly, we were talking not too long ago at David Cotton's place. David and I think Mr. Edgar is one who brought it up, and Rick was there, Rick Lambert, and you and I, and David and Edgar, and maybe William Nixon might have been there as well too.
Yeah.
We were talking about possibly doing a lever action hunt, going back and doing a lever action hunt where all you could do is lever action. Now, I love my Mossberg. I really, truly do. I know what they're capable of at long distances and close distances and all that other kind of thing. But I've also got a couple of 3 old rifles, lever action rifles, I'd really like to shoot. One's a Model 94 Winchester that belonged to my dad that I killed deer with in the past. Another is a Model 99 Savage, 300 Savage, that I actually borrowed from my brother to go hunting for my first mule deer, and shot my first mule deer with it, and I was recently able to procure it from my brother. And then the other is an old Model 1895 Winchester that was actually one of Teddy Roosevelt's favorite guns. You see a lot of pictures with him with one, but his was primarily in a 405 Winchester. This was actually in a 30 Government .6, which was one of the very first 30-06s. So the hard part's going to be when we get ready to do that, figuring out what we can do, or which one to take, kind of thing.
Which one you going to bring?
Yeah, which one
right?
I'm going to take.
Yeah.
I know David and Rick both have some old Model 99s, because I've seen them in the wood on those. I'm jealous of. So anyway, that's something we need to. And then we need to get this guy sitting next to us right here. Jeff, do you have access to an old lever action?
Well, it's not old. I've got a Mossberg that I bought for my wife about, I don't know, Luke, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I bought
about 5
for my
years.
wife.
Yeah, well, that's a lever action.
For Christmas, and she shot it. She shot her first hog with it.
Yeah.
It's a great little gun. But I can take that one and certainly go hunt with it.
Go back in the lever action.
And
Absolutely.
if not, I'm going to have got 2 extras there we can play with as well too. Now, we're talking about some nostalgic stuff. We just finished an absolutely fantastic meal that you guys put together here in camp, but we were talking fishing. Now we're kind of heading toward the tail end of our abilities to hunt whitetail deer here in about another month actually, but fishing's fixing to kick off, and I know both of you guys absolutely hate fishing, but
with a passion, I hate it.
quite the opposite, actually. All three of us kind of thing. But I'm going to talk a little bit about collecting lures, because, and I'll tell you, I recently found some that I had back when I was a kid, and so this had to have been I had to have bought probably in the 1950s, thereabout. These were Hedden lures and also Fred Arbogast lures. And I found some of those recently, and I want to go back. I've got a couple of them where I've got duplicates of, so I don't feel like if I lose one of them to a big old fish, that's fine, kind of thing. But I don't want to lose just the one. Tell me, how did you get into collecting lures? Because I know you have got, and you've gotten into other, I don't want to say old stuff, but antiquities, let's call it that, of hunting from in the outdoors from several years ago. What got you into all that?
It's funny, Larry. My grandfather was just a big, and grandmother both. They loved to fish, and I was 12 years old, and Grandpa calls me over and says, "Hey, I got something for you." I'm like, "Yeah, what's that?" And he pulls out this tackle box and opens it up, and it's like, whoa! It was like the Holy Grail, right? Here it is, all these old lures. I'm like, "Oh, can I have one?" He goes, "No, you can have all of them."
Oh my goodness!
He said, "Take the whole box. This is for you." And I brought that box home, and I just dug through them and looked at them, and I'm like, these are so cool. And they were probably from the 40s and 50s, maybe, some old heddens, some old creek chubs, little of this, little of that, whatever. Anyway, I just thought they were the coolest thing. I was 12 years old, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to get more lures. And so I just started buying them here and there. And, I'm 64 today, and 64 plus, but I've been collecting since I was 12.
Oh my goodness!
And
yes,
I've got several thousand of lures, and I've learned about lures. I learned what's valuable, what's not. I just enjoy it. It's fun. And later on, the last probably 5-10 years, I've really kind of got into the antique, kind of the hunting stuff too. The old Johnny Warmers, and I have an old trail cam that. Do you remember the ones that you'd take a fish line?
Oh, absolutely.
You put it across a tree,
Yeah.
and it had a little camera thing there, and
Yeah.
if they broke the string, it would set the timer off, and you
Right.
know exactly when it would go through. Stuff like that. I just think that stuff is so cool. And so I've just been kind of collecting all that stuff. And so I have, like at my house, I'll have different rooms set up. I'll have like the fishing room. I've got all sorts of old fishing stuff. And then you go in the other room, I've got a bunch of old hunting stuff in there. I just think that's neat stuff. I don't know. I have a passion for it. I love it.
Having seen some of those, I can understand. There's a fascination with those things, as far as I'm concerned. Just like what we were talking about with some of the older guns that we've had, and those kind of things. Do you have? How do you go about? How do you go about looking for this stuff? And I'm talking not just fishing lures. I mean, I go to lots of. My wife loves to go to antique stores, and so I go to antique stores with her, and I'm always looking for older fishing lures, old hunting photos, anything having to do with hunting more so than anything else. But occasionally I'll run across some of these fishing lures that I've got one of, and kind of like what I was talking about, I'd love to have two of them because I'd love to take one of them and go back and go fishing again with it. But how do you go about looking for them?
Flea markets, garage sales. I mean, I've found them everywhere. My wife and I will travel, and it's like, she'll want to go, oh, let's go check out that flea market or that antique store. I don't ever have a problem going with her doing that kind of stuff because you never know what you'll find. I have found some of the coolest things for like no money. I mean, I've bought lures for a few bucks. I think I was telling you earlier.
Right.
I bought two old lures from the late 1800s, and the guy wanted like $5 a piece for them, and I'm like, no, I'm going to give you 10, only because I know
Right.
these lures are worth some money. He wanted to get rid of them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want those. But I mean, it's just, I don't know, happenstance. You just happen across them. You might be at flea market. You could be anywhere and find stuff. But I'm always on the prowl.
Well, that's part of you're always looking. You can go to some of these stores and just kind of stare off into space or look at something on the wall or up high when going, well, I really want to be here and all that kind of stuff. But to me, there are all kinds of treasures to be found like that.
Absolutely. Some of the stuff I found, it was kind of funny because, I don't know, several weeks back, my wife and I were at a flea market. She wanted to go, and so I'll go along, whatever. And so we're, bebopping through this flea market, and I found a flashlight. Do you remember the old flashlights that are about, I don't know, yay big around, and they hold like, 5 or 6 D-sized batteries, like those big old
6-cell batteries.
Old
6-cell flashlights.
I bought one, brand new in the box, still had the tags on it.
Oh my God!
And it's probably from, I'm going to guess, the 60s. sometime in the 60s.
I bet it was, yeah.
A beautiful flashlight. And my wife looked at this. She goes, "What do you want that for?" I'm like, "You will never find a flashlight like that with the tags still on it, brand new in a box." And I think I paid $15 for it. Back then, you probably would have paid $15 for it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things, you just happen upon it. And it's like, you know what, that's cool stuff. And to me, it's a collectible. And I like to display stuff because people come to our house and they look, and I've got lures hanging all over the walls. And people come in and they're like, "Oh, my gosh." And we end up spending, way too much time. "Oh, what about this one? Tell me about this one. What about that?" And I have books. I've been collecting
Right.
so long that I know a lot of the companies. I know when they manufactured. I know what they manufactured. I know the general value. And obviously any old lure that you can find, just to tip folks, any old lure that you can find that's old, obviously old, new in the box, never been used. Those are the ones you want to keep your
Buy 'em
eyes out
and
for.
keep for yourself,
Yeah. Those ones are worth a lot of money typically if they're new in a box and hard to find. Like some of the old creek chubs I bought. I don't know, last year I bought an old creek chub dingbat. If you remember what they looked like, they had horsehair on them, glass eyes, kind of really cool lures. I found one brand new in a box. I don't think that everything ever hit water, and I paid $20 for it. I guarantee that thing's worth 10 times that. But to me, it's not because I want to make a bunch of money off it. I don't care about that. I want to have it and just because they're cool to look at.
They are. Weren't a lot of the creek chubs jointed?
Oh, many of them were.
That's what when you mentioned creek chubs, that I've got one or two that have got some age to them.
Yeah.
But I remember them being jointed more
Yeah.
so than that was one thing that caught my attention about those.
They'll have like the propellers on them.
That's the way these
kind
are.
of
Yes,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's collectible stuff, and it's amazing today. There's a lot of the National Fishing Lure Collectors Club, and they have chapters. And of course, if you go on Facebook, you can find all sorts of stuff on antique lures. So if you really want to learn about antique lures and what's valuable, what's out there, follow those pages, and you'll learn real quick.
We need to go hunting here for too very long. But you mentioned social media kind of thing. Tell people where the best place is to find our show, A Sportsman's Life.
The good stuff you're talking about.
The good stuff I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah, A Sportsman's Life. That's a show that I put together on a weekly basis with, of course, Luke and Larry and I. Our adventures. This hunt here will be coming up here in the next week or two, and you can find it on Carbon TV. So go to carbontv.com and just look up A Sportsman's Life. You'll find us there, and of course YouTube. Just go on YouTube under the search engine. Just look up A Sportsman's Life, and season 5. We are rolling with season 5. We are. Having fun, huh, boys?
You better believe it. We are.
Yes, we are. And to me, one of the beautiful things about all this is that having been involved in outdoor television for a long time is that years ago when I was involved in the more mainstream TV stuff, we would film now so that you could see it in July, August, September, October kind of thing. Whereas here, we go on a hunting trip or a fishing trip, generally you have it out within 2 weeks and sometimes even quicker, kind of thing. So
absolutely.
It's very up to date. It's a lot of fun, and if we do well, we show it. If we don't do well, we show it.
That's it. That's 100% it. I mean, it's all about, we call it real world outdoors, because you can watch shows all day long where they're going to get the biggest bull or they're going to get the biggest fish. That's great.
Yeah.
Not that we don't want to do that. But real world, it is what it is.
It is.
We'll go out there, and if we don't shoot a deer or we don't catch a fish, well, that's what you're going to see.
Absolutely.
But you will see Luke Clayton cook some good food.
You will, and I'm going to get back to that very quickly now with Luke. Luke, again, social media stuff. Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and friends.
Yep, that's true, Larry. It's a radio show weekly. Catfishradio.org, folks, is where you can learn about it. But that show is on about 19 terrestrial radio stations.
Right.
Larry has been with me for 18 years. I actually you were started with me
Very quickly after you started.
I barely knew how to get it recorded. But yeah, you've been with me every week, Campfire Talk, for 18 years.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a fun show. And I tell people, well, you know, they say, oh, radio, whoa, wait a minute. I say, look, I'm not Paul Harvey. I say, it comes off.
You will get the rest of the story, but
yeah, you might have to wait and listen a little bit to get it. But no, it's casual stuff, and we don't try to be a news show. I mean, I tell people Texas Parks and Wildlife has a media section. You can get online. You can learn all the current news, which I don't knock those kind of shows, but
No.
that's not what this is about. It's not. It's more like nuts and bolts, how to do just about anything in the outdoors. So I do that. It's also about a year ago it started becoming a podcast, and on iHeart, Apple, and Spotify, and all those things. So the podcast is actually the radio show combined the 4 segments that go continuous play. You know, it's Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and friends. I think you can just key in Catfish Radio and get there, but that's what that is.
I think you can too. And with mentioning that, obviously this is a podcast as well too, DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon. But we recently got onto a new network as well too called OutdoorAction.com. And I've really been sending a lot of people to OutdoorAction.com. It's free to subscribers, and the beauty of it is, and the reason I mentioned it here above the rest of them, is that, guess what? Your Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and friends and DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon are side by side when you pull them up. So it's easy.
Whoa.
So it's very easy to find both of them, kind of thing.
I need to research that a little more. Now, tell me again
The Outdoor Action TV. It's OutdoorAction.com. They're based out of San Antonio.
OutdoorAction.com.
OutdoorAction.com. Just sign up for it. It's free. You can watch TV shows there, a bunch of them. But you can also just kind of scroll down to podcast. And I think when you go from start at the left and go to the right, I think I'm the third one up, and you're the 4th one up. So you can go there and see both of them and listen to both of them, kind of thing. So, and then beyond that, we just want to remind folks too about our books that Luke and I did, Campfire Talk, and also I'm going to draw in a blank. Poor Man's Grizzly.
That's right. Yep.
Both those books, along with my White Deer Addictions, can be available through your website that you mentioned.
Yeah, catfishradio.org
or LarryWeissoon.net kind of thing. So with that, we're going to kind of gather up our gear here and get back out. And who knows, we do good this afternoon or early tomorrow morning, we may come right back here and do another one and tell you about how the rest of the hunt went. So you'll just have to join us right here next week to find out how we did. Thank you for joining us today. DSC's Campfires has also been brought to you by the Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, Texas Wildlife Association, Habit, Our Gear, Your Adventure, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.